Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and this is another LOTRO guide today, my friends. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about positioning and skills aimed forward and backward kind of thing. All right, so before you get super confused on what I'm saying is, there is a thing where you would normally, and this applies to melee classes mainly in Lord of the Rings Online. I'm going to show you the example on my Guardian, but this could apply to champions, burglars, all the melee classes. But basically, when you're facing a target, all targets, you have to know some background real quick. All targets have a base, right, or a location you click on. You can use tab, you can left click on. When you click on a target, you always will see a ring around their feet. As you can see right there, there's a ring around that creature, right, as you're targeting it. This could also be good for raid bosses, right? So again, this is something you will really need to use in raids or an instance or a dungeon if Lord of the Rings Online. Again, you guys greatly enjoyed my last one with animation cancellations, but using auto attack to help cancel animations so you can have multiple hits between your auto attacks and your skills. Again, that was, if you want to go see that video, that is in the same playlist. But what we're going to talk about today is basically abilities that can be, once they're cast, you can move or dodge or even flip backwards if you need to and run the other way. So that's what I'm going to talk about. This is something you'll have to test yourself to an extent. I can do individual on other classes if you'd like in the future. For guides, please leave a comment. But again, this is something that you'll have to just know the ability. You have to try it yourself, okay? So for example, I need to have a target. So I'm gonna use this Drake over here. So I'm gonna bring this Drake over by roaring at it so that it comes over to us. So now again, circles, right? So again, we have a circle base, they have a circle base. Kind of almost think of it like, you know, like a D&D character, right? So I'm aimed forward at the target, right? So when I click up one of my skills, or if I right click to start autoing attacking, it'll auto attack, right? If I look away from the target, it will not auto attack. If I try to use a skill that's a melee based skill that's not an AoE, it will not hit. It'll say up here, you must face target, right? Again, if it's an AoE ability, I can swing it, but if you notice, I'm not gonna hit because that only swings in front of me, right? So now here's the little tricky. Here's the trick I want to show you, okay? There are abilities that once you cast the animation, some are instantaneous, like retaliation, right? It's almost instant. But there are abilities that can cast and then look away. So for example, overwhelm will not work forward, but if I use it, I'm gonna have to give another test subject because he's too weak. Overwhelm won't work once you're looking at the target, but once you cast the ability, you'll know, once you practice this, you'll know. Once you cast the ability, you can then turn and run while its animation is going and you'll still hit the target. For example, all right, let me bring these guys over. So I'm going to hit him. I'm gonna get rid of one of them. All right, so ready, and watch when I cast, I can turn around and run, and I still landed it. You see how it still hit, even though the animation was already going off? You don't have to sit there and wait for the animation. That is the main point of this guide video for combat tactics, okay, in Lord of the Rings Online. This works in a lot of different MMOs, but especially I'm showing you Lord of the Rings Online. So again, I'm gonna let him, I'll wait until I get a parry response because I don't want to kill it. Okay, parry response, I'm gonna use retaliation. And now, if I use overwhelm again, immediately in front, and I can turn around and look away, and it will still cast, all right? Same thing with To the King. I can turn around, still cast, even though I'm not aimed at the target anymore. But that's because I was faced aimed at the target, cast the ability, so the animation started, then you can turn around and run the other way, and it'll still hit, all right? If in that time. Again, this is something you have to practice and get good timing on, but it is really handy, especially when it comes to doing a raid boss, okay? So if you don't want to stand there because he's doing an animation to slam down in front of him, you can cast your ability and know that, oh, well, if I already have cast overwhelm, I can start running away and it'll already hit. As long as I was aimed when I first cast it and it starts, then I can turn around and run. That animation will go off and I'll still hit. Now, again, this seems kind of counterproductive. I mean, intuitive, excuse me, not productive. Counterintuitive, because when you normally, if you were using an actual axe in real life, the animation would have to go all the way through to hit the target, right? But this is a MMO, right? So again, this is why I'm trying to teach you this to help you out. These are things you can learn as you go. Practice, see what abilities will work for this. Some abilities won't, some are so instant they won't. Some, for example, will have a little here at the end, like a lore master, you have inductions on skills. Most melee classes don't have inductions. Inductions are an overtime period where you charge an ability. So there are some inductions that you can move while you do, right? So some hunters have abilities in trait trees where they can have a charged up ability while they're running and then shoot, and the charge bar will work while they're moving. Other characters are locked in place when they're doing their channel or magical ability, or it's called induction in Lord of the Rings Online. Like a lore master, a lot of their abilities are channeled and they're stuck in place while they're doing it, and then they cast and then they can move. And we'll show you that right at the end here too, because that's really kind of important. But the biggest thing, so this is kind of a multi-guide here, and I can go into more depth on all these things. If you'd like, leave a comment and I will go into more depth on these things. But again, let me show something. For example, so if I go to, I'm gonna aggro this guy. Now, hammer down, for example. If I want to use hammer down and I'm looking away, it's going to tell me you must face the target. But I can cast it and then immediately run away, and it works anyway, right? Okay, so that's the thing. Again, that is also the case with, for a Guardian, Brutal Assault. I cannot cast it right now. But if I cast and then immediately run, I can hit him. Did you see how it hit anyway? You see? That's like the perfect example what you just saw, okay? I instantly cast it. I can see the cooldown win on the ability. So you see the little cooldown. Also, cooldowns on abilities, if you don't know this, is the little gray light thing, right? And then you can hover it. It'll also say it's counting down there. See, 3 seconds left, 2 seconds left, till you can use it again. These are the kind of things, though, that will help you out in combat, you guys, especially when you're doing dungeons or instances, because you don't want to sit there always and wait for the entire animation. Because again, if I did the entire animation and just sat there, 1 1000, 2 1000, that took, 2 full seconds. But if I wanted to, I could just go, instead of waiting for that whole animation, I could go 1 1000, half a second, run away, right? You don't have to be standing there. Or if you're fighting a boss and someone else is tanking and you're doing DPS, you usually want to be behind the boss to do the most DPS. It also makes it where they can't do, I forget, it's block or evade. One of their things, they have less defenses usually when you're behind a target, usually. That isn't always the case, but usually. But anyway, so that is very handy though, because you can also be behind the boss, right? While you're doing all these abilities. Right? So again, there are abilities sometimes that'll be beneficial to be behind a boss. For example, stagger. If I'm behind the target, it will apply the stagger debuff. If I crit, it will also apply the stagger debuff. That's a Guardian thing. Again, there are other things with other melee classes with that as well, but those are the kind of things that'll help you out though. So again, overpower, I cannot use it backwards, but I can use it while I run by even and turn and keep going, right? So there's always going to be that ability. This applies for up and down too, if he's higher than you, right? These are all good things. So again, the main goal of this video right now is positioning and using abilities where you can still move. And remember, once you face targeted ability can be faster and you can dodge something or even flip around as long as you've already started it, if it has no induction. That is not always the case when it comes to spellcasters with the same subject, okay? With forward-facing abilities and being able to use them instantaneously without waiting for the full animation or of the ability. So now we're gonna go ahead and switch to my lore master real quick. So here we go. All right, we're back. And we're on my lore master. I'm gonna go right outside here and we're gonna kill something. Now remember, you guys, I'm gonna start tagging on the end of these, combat tactics or something on the end of my guide playlist here for these kind of videos. And I'm gonna do more of these kind of things because I think these are very helpful for people. And so if what you like and you have some questions, please don't feel free to ask questions in the comments, even if you think it's a dumb question. I will do my best to answer it for you, and I may even make a video if it's something that you really seems like, oh yeah, that would help a lot of people. So please do leave comments in that way. But now we want to talk about the lore master and the difference with inductions and magic characters. There are instant spells which will work the same as a melee ability, but it's ranged, right? Again, we have to remember there's ranged abilities, right? It will work the same exact function where you won't be able to aim, but you could use it and then turn around. So there will be abilities like that. For example, Wizard's Fire or Improved Wizard's Fire, whichever one you have, depending on your trait tree. That is one lore master. Again, this will also apply to minstrels, rune keepers, all the things. Now you just need to know the difference between one that is instant cast or one that has an induction cast. So we're gonna find some creatures right here outside to use as targets. For example, this poor wolf. I'm gonna show you this right now. Okay, so for example, the Light of the Rising Dawn ability, it is 40-meter range. It has an induction of 0.8 seconds, which is pretty darn fast. But if I'm looking away from the target, again, remember the base thing, the circles. Doesn't matter how big the target is, they're always going to have a circle base. It will be larger if it's a bigger target, but it always will have that circle base when you're selected on it, see? So again, I don't want him to aggro me yet, so I'm walking away. If I try to cast Light of the Rising Dawn, you can actually cast this one backwards. Okay, so this is a good one to know. Some of these won't work backwards. For example, embers. Yeah, you see, you cannot see how it's saying you must face target. So these are another, this is the same thing I want to show you guys. So again, there is an induction. See when you cast it, and this one is instant. All right, so these are other, this is just as important to what I'm talking about, okay, with bases, aiming, cancellation. You test your abilities. So for example, we now know that the light of the rising dawn works as backwards. You do not have to be aiming at the target. But for example, embers, if I'm over here and I try to cast it, it says up here, you must face the target, right? And again, this is kind of covering it. So I'm gonna slightly move this for you. All right, you can see the warning. You must face the target. See, it's showing up there. So you can't face it. But when I do an induction, remember the induction for burning embers is 0.9 seconds and it roots me in place. So if I start it, I actually can't, oh, well, you cancel it, you can't. There are some that will cancel when you move and some that won't. This is very important too. There's a lot more with casters than melee. Melee is pretty simple when it comes to this subject. Casters gets a little more complex. You're gonna have to test your abilities. So some will, a lot of times what happens is when you do an induction, if you move during the induction, it'll cancel it, right? And you won't be able to cast it. But some, when you finish the induction and throw, there'll be a little moment where you're stuck and can't move, but then you'll be able to move again. So for example, if I finish the induction and try to move, see, I'm stuck, I couldn't move. I was trying to move during that, but when he actually does the throw, you're stuck, right? So again, if I'm doing the channel, let me get out of the stun real quick. Let me just get him sleepies for a minute. Well, he got woke up. So if I'm doing the induction, move, it interrupts it. But if I'm doing the induction, let it finish, and then try to move, I'll be locked while I'm throwing it for that induction moment, okay? So that is important to know. So you need to know when can you move, right? So this is really important for you mages out there when you play LOTRO in a dungeon and raid. If there's a boss that does some kind of animation and you know he's about to do it, don't do an ability that you know is going to lock you in place when you're finished with the induction for that half second. It might get you killed, okay? And again, this matters with the aiming of the ability. Some abilities will be able to aimed backwards, as we know, Light of the Rising Dawn. Others, like Embers, you need to be facing the target. Okay, so for this cat, for example, like, let's see, Gust of Wind. Gust of Wind can be thrown backwards, but did you see how it locked me in place? Did you see that weird animation, how I wasn't able to move for a second? All right. Now, there are ones that you can cast on the run. So now, for example, Bane Flare. You cannot cast Bane Flare while you're moving, but it has a 0.8 second. You can not move once you throw it. So this is the case with a lot of Lore Master abilities. When you move during the induction, it interrupts it. If you let the induction finish while you cast, you can't move for that half second. You're just frozen while you're throwing that ability, okay? You cannot move from your plate. You're basically rooted in place. And then there is also the abilities that you can throw backwards. So now again, for example, I can also throw Light of the Rising Dawn. You cannot do it on the move though. See, if I'm running from a target, you can, however, do Binding Flash backwards while you move. This is a very handy thing to know for a Lore Master, okay? So Blinding Flash is an instant cast. It's immediate. It can be thrown behind you, all right? No matter, like, from your target, right? Again, forward positioning, right? Your circle when you're aimed at a target. Again, I cannot throw it. For example, you can do Cracked Earth backwards. So there's a lot you can do backwards on a Lore Master. You just need to know which ones you can and can't do. Burning Embers is a forward ability. Again, I just got him rooted because of my ability. And again, there, it locks me in when I try to move. See? Now, there's some bigger abilities, for example, Ents Go to War, that when you move, you can't do it, right? But when you're doing it, and we killed our target. But again, it works the same way. Once it finishes the induction, you can't move until the animation is finished. So again, induction, I can move, cancel it, right, during the induction. But when I use it and it finishes and try to move right now, I can't move, I can't move, I can't move. I can turn, I can't move. Did you see that? During the animation. So these are the things that you need to know with this kind of thing, all right? And again, this is something, just practice all your skills. For example, the lightning ability, Storm, this is a instant ability, Storm Lore. It stuns people around you. When I try to cast it, I can cast this while running, okay? And this does occasionally change, certain abilities will change this kind of thing when you are, your tree is retraded, okay? That's another thing you have to remember. Some of them will change occasionally. So for example, hunters, which I'm not gonna get on my hunter to show you this. If you want me to in the future, I can. But hunters in the one trait tree, I believe it's the blue one, off the top of my head, a lot of the animations and inductions, they can do well on the run, right? They have a whole thing where they can like shoot while they run, which is really cool. That was added a couple years back when they redid the trees. I love it. It's fantastic. Usually hunters had to be in place while they did all their inductions and shoot, and when they tried to move and shoot, they'd miss constantly. Now they can shoot without missing. It's pretty cool. Whole Legolas style kind of thing, right? Which makes sense if it's a elven hunter or something. So now let's talk about one more thing. So now we have abilities too that, again, face forwarding abilities. What if you have an ability that goes in front of you, like a debuff on the ground, like a Lore Master Sticky Tar? This does matter which way you're aiming because it'll go in front of you. So if I was backwards, it would have put it here. Okay? Right, so that's a real simple thing, I feel like. But again, these are things that are important. So keep that in mind, my friends. So these are all the kind of things you want to, again, this is the same thing with your ranged abilities. I have another combat thing on ranged abilities and targeting and stuff if you're curious on that. But again, I think we've got enough on this subject for today. I don't want to make this video too long for you guys. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Remember, what abilities as a caster lock you in place after the induction? What abilities you can cancel the induction by moving during the induction, right? Or clicking, you know, you could do that. But it will lock you in place, so keep that in mind. What abilities can you throw behind you? As a caster, what abilities do you have to be facing the target? And again, if you're a melee, this whole subject is a lot more important in the fact that if you're close to the Braid Boss and he has a close ability, you need to think about, oh, my abilities, I don't need to wait for the whole animation. I could start the animation like I'm showing you in my Guardian, right? And run and dodge his ability, and you'll still get the damage off. You just had to already have had the ability aimed face front at the target. You had to be aiming at the target, right? And then also have it started, and then you can turn around and run the other way, or run sideways, or kite around the target if the tank has moved the target and you're trying to stay behind the target, right? So again, these are things important to remember with targeting and the circle bases. But at the same time, I hope that helped you guys out a little bit. I hope I explained that in enough detail for you without blowing your brains out. Again, I will do more videos like this in the future if you would like. I got a really big, everyone loved the last one I did on the animation cancellations between auto attacks and skills. Again, auto attacks are not a huge portion of your damage as a melee character, but they definitely do add a good 10%, 15% of your damage, which can be a lot of extra damage if you do your animations right. Go watch that video if you're curious. All right, guys, you guys have a great day in Middle-earth. Thank you so much to my wonderful Patreons for their support. Subscribe button is going to be right here. Next episode will be up there in the top left for this guide playlist. Again, go on the playlist and you can see the other ones I've made. Again, I'll have a tag on the back there that'll say combat tactics or something on each of these kind of videos on the guide playlist. And then over there is LOTRO main content with voiceovers. Have a great day, Middle-earth, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Voice of the Rings.